Hey everyone at home or wherever you happen to be, I'm Miss Jaime, and welcome back to another Art Explorations for Kids. So today we're going to learn about resist art. And resist art is a technique where you use different types of materials such as glue or tape or even pastel to create a resist when you're working to show negative space, and then you can paint over, and once you remove that applied medium before, you have this nice defined area of your paper underneath. Now some resists you remove, some resists you leave on, and you can use them on different materials such as paper or even silk and different fabrics. So today what we're going to do is create our own resist rose using Elmer's glue. So first we're going to start off by drawing our rose and getting our guidelines down for where we want to set our glue in. So we're going to start off by drawing a circle for the center of our rose. And then we're going to come in with a little curly cue and finish it off. Bring in a line curving here and a line curving here. Now remember to draw lightly because we're going to go back in and erase the excess lines that we don't need. So then from where we started this curl up here, we're going to come up and around in front of our rose center and curl up. Then we're going to come back up to the top where we started this petal, create a curl, meet here. And create a nice rounded edge from the top of that petal to meet down at our right petal. Now we're going to come over here. We're just going to kind of keep creating these same sort of shapes and finish off this petal down here. I'm actually going to bring this one down a little bit more. Now we're going to start creating our outside petals, and these do not have to all be the exact same shape that I'm making them, but we're going to curve out and around. And these are just fun flowing lines. A lot of petals have lots of unique different shapes, so you do not have to make them all exactly the same. And bring this one around. It's going to go behind that first one and come up here and in. We want this petal to kind of come in front right here. So we're going to draw a line like so because it's folding in front of our middle part of our rose. And we're going to come back and erase this excess line right here. So now we're just going to continue making some bigger petals. That same flowing motion. Okay, now we want to give our rose some leaves. So we're going to create little jagged edges. If you've ever seen rose leaves, they have something of a little pointed edge. We just want to mimic that. And then we also want to add the veins in our leaves, so we'll draw a line right down the center. And then just few curved lines out to the sides for the veins. Okay. And we'll go over here and do the same thing. Maybe make this leaf a different size, maybe a little bit smaller. And add the veins in. Okay, now we have our basic rose in, and we want to go ahead and get rid of a lot of our excess lines. So we've drawn lines that define petals that are in front of others, and so we want to just get rid of what we don't see, what we wouldn't see in the background. So like in here, for instance, I said we were creating this petal that was curling around. I'm just going to go in and erase that part of the center flower. And if you over erase, that's okay. You can go back in and put your marks back. Just gently brush off any extra shavings. And here you can see this petal curls around here, so we don't need to see all of this in here. And go ahead and erase that. Same thing in here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just make these lines a little bit darker where I erased a little more than I wanted to. Okay, and there we have our rose. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and open up our Elmer's glue, and you'll notice that the top has a slit opening. You're going to want to hold it so that the slit is vertical, and you're going to just very gently apply pressure to the bottle. You don't want too much to come out, and you're basically just going to trace the lines of your rose as best you can with a light application of the glue. And it's okay if your lines are not perfect. It will only make your resist painting more textured and unique. Now when you're getting into these little tiny areas in the center of the rose, if you feel like your glue bottle is just a little too much to handle these detailed areas, then feel free to pour some of this glue into a palette and use one of the Creative Inspirations brushes to apply it to the lines on the inside. And also don't forget to wash your brush immediately after you're done, just to make sure that you can preserve your brush to use later. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up gluing the rest of my rose, and I'm going to let you do the same. And once that's done, you want to make sure that it is completely dry before we continue our next step. And you may have some thicker applications of glue. And if you don't feel like waiting around for it to dry on its own, what you can do is take a hairdryer and on the low setting, dry it from a distance so that you make sure that you do not smear any of your glue. So we're going to go ahead, finish this portion of the project, and when we come back, we'll start painting our image. So welcome back. Now you can see that I have my rose that's been completely outlined and has had plenty of time to dry. And I'm going to go ahead and start applying paint. So I'm going to take my number 6 Creative Inspirations brush, Dip it in water. And what we're going to do is make a few gradients, which is one color blending into another. And we're going to do this with yellow and orange and create a bright, vibrant rose. You want to make sure that you get enough water on your brush, really saturate it. Then just go ahead and start filling in these areas of your rose. And what you'll notice is that you can go over the glue areas and you will still see your paper. And also, if you don't go over those areas that are glued, that the glue is giving you a really nice little barrier that you can work in. And so you don't have to worry so much about going from one section of your drawing and bleeding into another section when you start applying more colors. I'm going to do the same thing and take green and come into our leaf. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you the technique for creating the gradients in the petals, and then I'm going to let you guys go ahead and fill in the rest. So what we're going to do is now we're going to apply our brush to one of our oranges, get it nice and saturated, and get enough water in there. You'll see little bubbles start to form in your paint, and that way you know you have enough water mixed in and you've really activated your watercolor paint. So now what you're going to do is just create a line along the edge of your rose. Just carefully work it back and forth. Okay. And then to blend our gradient just a little bit more softly, we're just going to get the paint off of our brush just so that it's a little bit wet and all we have is water, and go in and blend that edge in there. So this is how you finish out each of the petals in the rest of your rose. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with my rose, and you go ahead and complete your rose, and when we come back we'll compare our pictures and see how our roses look. So welcome back. Now we have our completed rose, and you can see that we have the gradients in each of the petals going from dark to light, and then we have this really fun resist that has created this really beautiful effect. And you can see that we have our negative space showing in here, and so we can see the paper underneath. And you may have noticed that some of your glue has some paint still on top of it, and if you would like for your paper to show through a little bit more, all you need to do is take a lightly dampened paper towel and just gently brush off on the glue, and the watercolor will come right off and you'll be able to see the paper even clearer. Now with this version of Resist, We did use pencil, so you do see your pencil marks underneath, and that's because we were learning with this technique. However, if you would like to try something a little bit more advanced and try drawing without using pencils, so you just have the paper showing underneath, then go right ahead. Go ahead and look at other examples of resist. There's a lot out there, and it is a really fun technique to use. Now, if you're happy with your painting the way it is, you can go ahead and stop the video right here. This is the end of the beginner's portion. However, if you would like to continue on and add a little bit more, then stick around and we'll begin the advanced portion in just a second. Welcome back to the advanced portion. Now, as we were ending the beginning portion, I mentioned that we had used some outlines here and that a lot of resists, you won't see the outlines because you'll draw with the resist instead of having these guidelines down. So now what we're going to do for our background is we're just going to play with laying down the glue and then seeing what effects that gives us, and then you can see how you feel you might want to handle future projects using pencil or just the glue to make your images. So we're going to go ahead and take our glue. We're actually just going to apply some wavy lines to our background that we will later go in and also apply that gradient technique of painting in between. Now you'll notice that I have some glue that's been beaded up here, and then my lines are not complete, and I don't really want to go back over with the glue because I don't want to end up putting too much glue down and having it go everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a brush and just gently go along each of my lines and just spread out that glue a little bit more evenly. And so now that I'm done going back over my lines with my brush, I'm going to make sure that I wash it out really well, just so that way I don't destroy it and can use it later and the bristles don't get dried by the glue. So now what we want to do before we continue, we want to make sure that this dries completely. So I'm going to go ahead and let mine dry, and then when we come back, we'll finish up our background. Alright, so now we've had plenty of time for our background to dry. What we're going to do is go ahead and apply the gradient technique that we learned from our petals into our background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with more of a pinkish magenta color as our base, and then work in our purple for our gradient instead of the orange to yellow that we have in our petals. So I'm going to grab a bigger brush this time, our size 8 Creative Inspirations brush. Go ahead and dip that in the water. I'm going to work with this color here. I'm just going to lay in that first layer. And remember to keep going back to your water and applying it to your pan in your watercolor, so that way you have plenty of paint to work with on your brush. And for this portion of the painting, you also want to make sure that you have something underneath your drawing, just to make sure that you don't get your table or anything else that you're working on near you dirty, because we really want to get to those edges as we're working on our background. So now that we have our background layer in, we're going to go ahead and dip into our purple here. And then just starting from the top, gently bring it down. Now you can see we have our gradient going from this darker purple to this softer pink here. We're just going to go ahead and continue that through each of our sections here. And I'm going to do that and let you guys do that with your images. And when we come back, we'll see what we have. So welcome back. Now we have our background completely finished. You can see that I have the gradients going in each of my sections in the background, from this purple to this pink, and you can tell the difference between the resist that we did without the lines as opposed to in our rows where you can see the guidelines that we created. So this is just a really fun way to get a unique effect in your pictures, and I really hope that you look into other ways to use resist with either oil pastels or tape. There are just so many different ways to play around with this technique. So I hope you guys enjoyed working on this project. I had so much fun working on it with you, and I can't wait to see you on the next Art Explorations for Kids.